What is shaking, you guys? Welcome back to Let's Go Win podcast, and the show that helps you be happy, healthy, and wealthy. That's the intent of the show that we do every single time. And the gentleman that I'm going to bring on today, we're going to be talking about storytelling, because we all have a story. Some of us tell it pretty well, some of us don't. And the whole world does revolve around stories. I mean, we are by nature, human beings love stories. And in sales, they say facts tell, stories sell. And in my opinion, all of life is sales. So let's get this story down. And that's who Jason Cercone. He is all about that. And we're off air. I was talking about his intro. He's like, brother, just say that I am a storyteller that can help tell your story better. I said, sold. Let's go for it. How you doing, man?
JM, I'm doing fantastic, my friend. Thank you very much for having me here today.
It's truly my pleasure. You know what I loved about it? You were so honest to say, I do this and I help people strategize, but then I have to explain it further. You're like, I got to get a little bit better. And it made me think of Richard Branson. Like, he has this thing. If you can't tell people your business on the back of a beer coaster, he's not interested. He's not buying. And that's kind of what I heard from you, man. You're like, nope, I'm getting too technical. I'm really good at helping people tell their story. So let's talk about that, man. What led you to this?
Well, I mean, it's a whole story into diving into podcasting back in 2015. I'll get into that as well. But honestly, yeah, with the storytelling piece, and I was looking at what I do, I'm like, if I podcast branding strategist, that was the title. Even I was to the point where I'm like, what the hell is that? It's time to really get into the nuts and bolts of this and not put this technical facade in place that someone might look at and say the same thing and say, well, if I don't understand what the title means, why do I need this person to help me? And that was really where I was just like, you know what, I've got to make some changes on this and just get to the root of it. And at the root of it, it's story. We've been telling stories for generations. That's what drives life forward. And to tell you how I landed here, for me with podcasting, which has really been my passion and my love, in 2015, I started my first podcast out of spite, which is not exactly what most people do, or it's not the story that you typically hear when it comes to somebody getting a podcast off the ground. At that point in time, I had actually just lost my last corporate job, which is a story in and of itself that I can dive into if you want to. But right after that had happened, I was starting my first podcast. And the reason was I had started a little side project that then became my full-time passion and my full-time job in the craft beer space. And I launched this app that helped connect people in Pittsburgh, where I'm located, to events and happenings and beer releases and all this cool stuff, and got some partners from it, some breweries, some bars, restaurants. They wanted to join in so they could have their events put out to the world, or out to the city as it is. And the day I launched the app, I got my first troll on Twitter. Started tearing me down and how terrible this thing was and how I was doing everything wrong and I wasn't thinking about this and yada, yada, yada. And having never really experienced a troll before, I probably interacted with him far too much. But in the interaction process, I said, what the hell does this guy do? And I went and looked, and he hosted a beer podcast. And it just so happened that my best friend and I had been kicking around ideas about doing a podcast. We just couldn't land on an idea that we could run with. And the second I saw that he hosted one, I called my friend and said, I found our idea. We're going to do a beer podcast, and we're going to do it better than that guy. And you want to talk about being naive. We did zero planning. We did not target our niche audience. We recorded our first episode in a noisy bar, very minimal to no editing whatsoever. We threw this thing out on the internet and had a podcast, and it was terrible. I mean, it was just a train wreck. But what it did was rekindle this fire that I had inside of me, because I did radio in college and loved it. But there was a little gap in between that, college ending and podcasting beginning. So once I got back into it, I really fell in love with it and just knew that I wanted to do podcasting, use it to tell stories, use it to connect with people, use it to grow my brand and help others do the same. And I've just been able to develop that because I've been committed to getting better at it each and every day. So that brings us up to speed to where we are today.
Well, there's a ton to unpack there. The first thing, I'm laughing at several things, because I'm laughing at how much time we spend wordsmithing and doing all this stuff so it sounds right. And then you get out there and people are like, what the hell are you talking about? And then you say something as basic as, look, man, I help you tell your story so that people understand you better. Oh, cool. I'm totally in. But it's funny, we in the boardroom, you're back there and there's a mission statement. We're going to do this. And you end up with this convoluted thing that it's like, I don't even know where do we start? And I that was the first chuckle because I'm experiencing that myself, right? Like Transcendent Life was the name of this podcast originally. And everybody's like, what the hell are you talking about with transcend? I'm like, overcome self-limiting beliefs. No, JM, I don't. That's your definition. And the guy I'm working with is like, call it Let's Go Win. And I was like, really? That's simple? He's like, yeah, man, it's that simple. So why, I'll start with that question. Why do we complicate matters? Why can't we just say, this is what I'm doing? Instead, we want to, and I have my own thoughts on it. I'm curious on yours. Why in the hell do we confuse it so much?
I think it's pretty simple. I think that the more complicated that the answer or the title seems, the more important we feel, or the more important it makes us look. And we live in this world to where we have to have this shiny, polished product out in front of the world, right? I don't think that's the way it is anymore, because human beings look at that and they, that's not for me. They resonate with people that have gone through the bullshit like they have. And they're able to make a connection with a person that's a real human. So when we start to strip away those titles and we get into the bare bones of what we're doing and how we're helping them, telling a better story, let's go win. That's all something that we can relate to, because it's a mindset that even a person at the very beginning of their journey can have in their head and say, yes, this is how I want to take this journey. And this is the type of mentality I want to put into place. If we're complicating with all of these fancy mission statements and complicated processes and titles that no one understands when they see them, it completely takes focus away from what's important. And therefore, in our own minds, we might have built something up that, oh my God, look at how high I am on this pedestal. I'm a podcast branding strategist. And then it gets the person that I need to connect with is saying, you do what? What the hell is this? And you lose that possible relationship, which could lead to a number of different things. So you have to think about it from a sense of clarity and not think that it's this huge, important anomaly that you've built up in your head. Yeah. That's similar to your belief?
Yeah. Well, here's what I've found. Again, being a coach, I'm trying to do a lot of this without having a true coach, just asking questions like, hey, man, what do you want to do? I want to do this. How is that helping the world be better? Because what solution are you bringing to their problem? What is their problem? And it's so fascinating that I can do it for other human beings. When I'm trying to do it for myself, it was like impossible. And so I was chuckling at that because I know this is what happens is we go, wait a minute, I'm confused. Somebody help. And somebody asked the most basic questions and you're like, holy shit, this is really actually pretty simple. And then the other thing I was laughing at is when you got your first troll, because I told my wife, she will protect me at no ends, right? Like she don't ever say anything bad about, she can say something bad about me, but no one else can. And when I first wrote the book and then people would start saying bad shit, she's like, I don't get about it. I said, babe, that means we've done okay, because you're never, I don't care. Mother Teresa had haters, and that just tells you like you're doing something big. So I was laughing about that, but I wanted to share that because I'm curious on your thoughts. This troll, this person that had this beer podcast has literally led you to your passion, your desire. So do you reach out to him and say, thank you, brother, I appreciate you so much?
I've never met him. And I'll be honest with you, I actually looked him up on Twitter the other day because I've been telling this story a lot and I just wondered if he was still there, and he's not there anymore. So I had never connected with him outside of that. I did run into his co-host at a brewery a couple of years after that whole exchange had gone down, and we just laughed about it. It was so far in the past that I had no more ill will. It was what it was. If I saw the guy today, I'd shake his hand and I would tell him thank you, because weird twisted way, you're right, it did bring me to where I am. And I have to believe, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think I would have found podcasting without his ill thoughts and all of this troll culture that he brought to my Twitter account. But at the same time, it was all about timing, and it all happened for the right reasons, and it all has come together very nicely. So no, I have not ever had an opportunity to connect with him in real life. It was nothing more than the exchange we had on Twitter. But I do owe him a beer, and I would probably buy him at least one, maybe a whole case, if I ever ran into him in person today.
Well, let's just give Beer Troll Guy a shout out. Good job. You got Jason to where now he is telling stories. He's helping people tell their story better. So good job trolling. And I've been in Pittsburgh's beer, like the arena of Pittsburgh beer. It's pretty damn good, man. You guys,
it is.
when it comes to micro beers and I'm gluten intolerant, so I don't get to enjoy half of the really good stuff. Not even half. I get to enjoy like a skosh if they have it, but it is fantastic. Well, let's talk about this, man. Like when you talk about stories, when you're actually helping somebody not be a podcast brand strategist, quote unquote,
Right.
really helping people tell their story. Podcasts are a part of that. And
Yes.
podcasts have greatly grown brands because, like you said, you connect with human beings. You're having authentic, real conversations. I don't edit this show for great reason because I'm going to say stupid shit. I'm going to say, and I'm okay with that because that's real.
Yeah.
And see, there's my, So talk to me about, we're going to get into podcasts a little bit and why it's been so impactful for you, because I've told my audience why I love it. I would love to hear from your vantage point, how someone listening could take this and go apply it to their current business, their personal growth, because I love podcasts and I know you do too.
Mm-hmm.
As the former podcast strategist turned storyteller, why is it so important that people use this platform?
There's so much value built within this, and it's not just from what the audience is hearing right now. And that's something that you have to separate yourself from that in the moment. JM, as you and I sit here right now in this moment, it's you and me having a one-on-one conversation. We might have a cocktail in front of us. Being gluten intolerant, I don't want to put a beer in front of you. Maybe I have one in front of me.
Tequila, please.
Okay, you know what? I will gladly share in some good tequila with you as well. But in this moment, it's just two people connecting to have a powerful conversation. And at the core of it, that's what podcasting is all about. I think too often guests and even hosts put so much pressure on themselves to perform because they think they're in front of this audience of hundreds, thousands, no matter who's tuning in. But in the moment when you're recording, it's just two people. And sometimes if there's co-hosts or multiple guests, you have a few more. But the point is, it's a very one-on-one type of interaction to where very powerful things can happen. And the byproduct is when this is live, now the audience gets to hear it and they can resonate with that message as well. And built within all of that is this opportunity to tell your story. And no matter where you are on your journey, you have a story to tell. A lot of people think they have to get to level 10 and be 10 out of 10 before they can start projecting what they've learned to others as a means of growth for their brand and as a means of impacting them. And that's not the case, because let's say you're somewhere on your journey a few months in and you've gotten to level 4. It's somewhere on someone else's journey, they're at level 1, level 2, level 3, and you've now gained experience from your story, from your mistakes, from your triumphs. And you can talk to those people and help them get to level 4. And as they level up, you level up. This platform gives you so many opportunities to make those type of powerful connections on the front end with that conversation, because now you're networking with a like-minded professional. They may need your service and might buy from you as soon as you get done recording. That's one thing that could happen. Maybe they know somebody that they work with that could truly benefit from your product or service. Because you help them bring value to their podcast, they're probably more willing to tell someone else, you've got to connect with Jason, you've got to connect with JM. They can really help you. I know you talked about needing some assistance with this. I think I found the resource for you. Because you showed up with value in mind versus just trying to put a sales pitch on the air, the person that is producing that content is going to endorse you to their audience and do all the selling for you. And when I talk about podcast guesting simplified, this is what I mean. And this is really what I'm leaning into with the storytelling and using podcasting to its full potential. It's locking in that authentic story and telling it to the world with confidence so the right people will resonate with it. And then it's maximizing each guest opportunity for everything that it can give you, from networking to brand building to amplifying your message and beyond. It can't get much more simpler than that. And I think to do that, you have to remove the veil of performing to be in sales mode. And once you eliminate all that, you can get so much from this platform. It's enormous, the changes and the benefits it will bring to everything you're doing.
Yeah, I definitely second all of that. And, you know, I want to rewind back to when you said my buddy and I are at the bar and we just do our first one with zero planning. What's fascinating, brother, and again, this is where we complicate it. I didn't start quite that simple, but it wasn't far from it, right? I didn't have this fancy camera I have now. I had just kind of, I think it was at the time, just my laptop, the camera, and the headphones weren't the same. And, I was watching, I think it was Matthew McConaughey, either as a guest or someone else, and he was literally on his headphones plugged into the jack of his computer. And I'm going, damn it, he gets it, man. It's not about all this fancy equipment. Right. Because truth be told, the cell phone, the laptop, it's all sufficient. Because it's not really about it being all that aesthetically pleasing, although sure, that's nice if you can, I suppose. But there is something to be said about, hey, man, just show up and be you. And that's what I love about how we started this episode. I was about to do this whole intro and you're like, don't say that. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be way more fun because all these questions that were lined out, it gets in the way of an authentic conversation where you say something and I'm like, oh, that's cool. Let's talk about this. And that leads us down the next path, which is how an authentic conversation goes. And I think there's a lot of attraction to that. So my point in that little rant is if you're even considering doing a podcast, you don't need the fancy stuff. Just go and just put out the value, like Jason said, and let the world receive it how it's meant to be received. Yeah, now I lost my train of thought, of course. No, it is fascinating how I guess the theme of the show is we make things complex when we really are seeking simplistic things. We're really seeking everyone has a story, tell it. And so my question would be, I see people getting nervous all the time. I don't want to be on a podcast. I'm like, why? It's just you and I talking. Because there's this perception of, oh, I'm talking to thousands or millions for some podcasts or, hundreds of millions. But the truth is, it's just two human beings talking. So why do people get in their head about it, man? It's so fascinating to me.
Well, I think it is that mindset. It's not, it doesn't seem like this conversation when you hear podcasts, you think thousands of people are going to hear this. But in reality, when you're producing it in the very beginning, it's just two people talking. So that should put your mind at ease. One thing I know throws a lot of people off that I've experienced is they think no one wants to hear their voice because they hate the sound of it. And you hear people say that all the time. Oh, I hate the sound of my voice. Guess what? You're the only one. Because no one else is thinking of it that way. They're thinking about the story you're telling and the message you're bringing to the world. So get beyond that right now. You get out of your own head. And the more you listen to yourself, the more comfortable you get with it, which leads me to my next point. Some people won't go back and listen to their guest appearances. I'm like, why? There was so much you can learn from yourself. You can learn that you might say way too frequently. I mean, and get it. I understand that some people use it from as a transition in one point to another. But if you're saying it before every single sentence, it can get laborious. And it's something that as you focus on it, you can remove it from your vocabulary. I'm sure no one's noticed at this point. I haven't said it yet. That took time. I really had to focus on the fact that I was saying it. Okay, what do I need to do to let silence be my friend? And instead of saying to get me to the next point, just let things hang for a few seconds and then start speaking again.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You silence so well. I was like, my turn.
I did say.
It is funny how we have these trigger words that do change to your point of listening. So I think long ago it started as and then I call everybody brother, and a lot. I had this, there was a bet one time with two of my best friends, and they're like, you say bro all the time. I'm like, I never say bro. I say brother. And they're like, JM, you say bro as much as brother, if not more. And I said, all right, let's go ahead. We'll bet for the next hour. I bet you I don't say it more than like 20 times. I think I made it 3 minutes and I said it 37 times. And the point is, it does get in the way sometimes of our communication. If somebody doesn't give me that feedback, which thank you, that was Micah and Leanna. Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Yeah.
And it also will shift. So once I realize, okay, I'm not going to say bro or brother, then it turned into right. Or there's always this word for me that I do have to check in on, because the point is I want my communication to be authentic, to be real, but I also want it to be heard. And some of these words do get in the way. So that does get people maybe tripped up about being a guest on a show, is because they want to sound correct. They want to sound smart. They don't want to sound like they're nervous.
Yeah, I want to hear you and Hulk Hogan on a podcast together. Can we make that happen? Just hear brother, brother, brother over and over. I think that'd be fun to listen.
Another contest.
I think, well, to speak to your point, JM, I think another thing that holds people back is the fact that they just don't want to press play. They don't want to get started, because it is a journey. It does take time. Whenever you're embarking on anything that's going to require you to put a commitment forward so you can develop your skill set and elevate your game, many people shy away from that type of mission. They just don't want to break out of that comfort zone and get better at something. Even if it could get them to a higher level of success, they're going to find reasons to hold themselves back. And I think that not knowing how to truly bring that story forward and then get better as they make these guest appearances, or if they're launching their own show, get better at asking questions and having stronger communication. That does not happen just by hitting play, but as you progress after hitting play, you get better. And I always use that analogy for getting my ass to the gym. I may not want to get out of bed to go, but I know once I press play, I'm going to be into it. And once I get my blood flowing and everything's rolling, now I'm into it. Now I can go for an hour, hour and a half without even thinking. And I mean, I'm no gym rat. No, there's nobody going to blame or think that's what's in play, but it's just more about self-care and taking those steps. I know that I have to, in my mind, press play to get to the next level. Many folks won't do that when it comes to podcast guesting, because I will say flat out, you're probably going to suck when you first start. Your first episode is never good. You have to get better at this. Okay, let me use a golf analogy. I've been golfing since I was 7. My first swing when I was 7 wasn't good. I don't remember it. I'm just using simple logic. I'm sure it sucked, but I just kept at it, and I've gotten better as I've gotten older and continued to put practice in. And that's what comes from doing this, is once you press play, once you get started and you fumble a few times and you realize some of the mistakes, and that's, working with me when we evaluate interviews, I can say, okay, here's some things you can work on for the next interview. It helps you get better at the process. And at the end, you become a much more clear, concise storyteller. And that story, as it begins to be more comfortable, you get comfortable with it, you tell it with more confidence, people start to resonate, and that's when they follow you into your world so they can get more value from you. But you'll never get to that point unless you press play and get started on the front end.
And as you were talking, I was thinking there's quality in the quantity. And the more you do something, again, going back to Gladwell, 10,000 hour rule, that he wrote about in Outliers, which many people dispute. They're like, that's bullshit. That's not accurate. And I do know this: if you put 10,000 hours towards anything, you're going to get better at it. Plain and simple. But one of the things that I did see a question on here that I have to ask, because it really is with the theme of the show, and that's just simplifying the process and the sales process in general. Because again, we started by saying facts tell, stories sell, and it's true. Like, I've been in sales for years. I've been in leadership for years. People want to buy into it. They don't want to say no if they believe you. And so simplifying that, taking out the filler words, right? Really getting to the core, I think is something that we can continue to evolve and get better at. And that's one of the things that I wanted to ask you about. Talk about simplifying the sales process. And I may not have asked that exactly the way it was written, but it's attracting me because I'm like, yes, I love simplifying everything because our world is already too damn complicated. Make my life easier, Jason.
Yeah. Well, you think about what typically goes into any type of sales process. There's usually that initial phase where a person sees value enough to schedule an appointment or to pick up the phone and make a call, whatever the structure calls for. And in that initial process, you've got to do some feeling out on your end to get to know that person. And at the same time, they're going to do that back because they want to get to know you. And that's what's going to establish trust. So if they trust you, now they're going to feel more comfortable to make an investment with whatever you're selling, product, service, course, book, you name it. They want to know that they're investing their money. They don't want to be sold to, but they want to know that you're going to be the resource that's going to bring them the transformation they seek. Flip that on its head. If they hear you on a podcast for 30 minutes, for 45 minutes, and they have you in their ear, which is one of the most dynamic elements of podcasting, is that when someone commits to listening to a show, if they're truly captivated and they're staying invested in it from start to finish, yes, they may be doing other things like driving or riding the bus or taking a walk or at the gym, but they have you in their ear for an extended period of time. TikToks don't bring that type of value. Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, even videos that are more long form, it's still a little bit shorter of a delivery method. With podcasting, it's one-on-one in their ear for as long as that podcast goes. They know you now. And if you really resonated with your story and with your expertise, you've established thought leadership, and more importantly, you've established trust. Now, instead of having to go through that feeling out process, they already know who you are. They already know what you do, what type of transformation you can bring them, where you want to take them, and how you're going to get them there. They may buy from you on the first phone call. They may just pick up to say, listen, I just heard you on Let's Go Win. I'm ready. Let's do this. That is so friggin' powerful. And to simplify the process, that whole cold element of sales gets removed because you brought value to a podcast that they listen to because it brings value to their life. You're now adding a new element to that and a new spin. And when it comes time for them to make a buying decision, maybe they don't do it today, but if you have given them enough value to where they enter into your ecosystem, you can continue to nurture them just like anybody else that would come into your ecosystem. And when the time is right for them, they've built that trust and they can take the next step and make an investment in you.
I want to talk about some of the best storytellers of our generation, and a couple of people come to mind. I think of Steve Jobs and I think of Elon Musk as two that immediately, whether you like them or you don't, okay, and people, again, trolls, haters, if you've done anything in this world, you're going to have people that dislike you. But one of the things they both do remarkably well is they simplify the story. Now, I don't see them following the story brand, which is a good book, by the way, but I don't see them following that narrative. Steve Jobs did have Pixar. That was a part of what Apple and they were part of that. And some of the best storytelling has been done in those through that studio. But he had this remarkable ability to say, look, we're going to revolutionize music by putting 1,000 songs into this iPod, which, by the way, fits in your pocket. And he would repeat it again and again and again. He didn't go through the micro stuff that we fit in here to allow this, like that shit gets lost. Like, I don't even know what you're talking about. He said, we're going to revolutionize music by putting 1,000 songs in your pocket. What do you teach, brother? Is it just literally getting to the heart and to the core? Do you teach the story brand? Do you have your own system? I'm really curious because I think various things resonate with different people. And I really resonated with how the way Jobs did it. Even though he's wildly brilliant, he simplified it to where I was like, yep, I can understand that.
I couldn't agree with you more. Steve Jobs is phenomenal, and there's a lot of leaders out there that do such a phenomenal job in how they tell their story. And usually the ones that are continuing to repeat that story are the ones that we start to get invested in, because the more you hear something, the more you do start to resonate and the more powerfully it rings in your head. So something like, we're going to revolutionize music and put it all in your pocket, the more you hear it, because the first time you hear that, you're like, what? No, really? How? And then you start to listen more and more, and it just, and now all of a sudden as it's happening, you're like, yes, this is the only way I'm going to listen to music going forward. So yeah, there's so much power in that. I believe very much in the hero's journey, and I'll be completely transparent in regards to the story brand model. I don't know a ton about it. I've heard some people talk about it. I know it's a very powerful method. I do believe, and I think just from, this is probably more from osmosis than anything, the hero's journey is worked into that method. And that's why what I try to get into people, or out of people, I should say, is the fact that whatever your past has brought you, it's helped develop who you are today. And some people have a very difficult time going back in time and thinking about those hard times. And I get that. That's 100% human nature. But within those hard times is something that made you grow. There was something that said, this sucks. I want to do better. I want to get beyond this and get to a point where this no longer impacts my mindset and my approach at life anymore. And whatever the strategy, whatever the steps, whatever the approach was that got you from that point to the new transformation you're living in today, that's a story that everyone, not everyone, but the right people are going to resonate with, because there are a lot of other people that are on very similar journeys, not the same as you, because no one's person is the same as the next, but there's a lot of similarities that can be drawn and a lot of parallels that can be used to tell that story. And when the right person hears it, they're going to say, that's me. That's where I'm at on my journey right now. I could really use this person's guidance. They've clearly taken this pile of shit and turned it into some gold. That's the transformation I want to feel. How else can this person impact me? Oh, look, they've got a book. Well, oh my God, they're on 45 podcasts. Well, I guess I've got my playlist for the next month. There's so much value in that hero's journey and taking people from, I was here and now I'm here and I want to help you get there too. That's how I see storytelling being its most powerful, because we all can resonate with somebody's story and we can all get fired up inside based on somebody's story. And it may not impact the person next to you the same way. I will say right now, and I'm still kind of mad that I hadn't heard about this or been recommended this before. Have you ever read Relentless?
Oh yeah.
By was his name Tim Grover, I believe. Grover. Oh my God. I'm listening to it audio. I've gotten through most of it in about 2 days. I've got to call up the wall guy or some kind of carpenter, because I've ran through all these walls in my house. This guy just has me so fired up because his message is so powerful. And I'm thinking about that from that coaching mentality of, it's incredible the impact that message has had on me. Now, someone else might hear that and say, well, screw this guy. There's no way I could possibly do what he's saying I could. And in my head, I'm thinking, I'm elevating my game to think on this level. The stories that he's telling about how he's helped Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant and Dwayne Wade, holy crap, did that hit me the right way, to the point where when I'm done listening, I'm starting over and listening again. It's phenomenal. But that's, again, the power of the stories he's telling impacted me. Someone listening to our conversation today, JM, might not feel that way about the story I'm telling, but someone else might. And that's the person I want to talk to more.
I think it's
Girls
really good point. Here's the deal. You also should listen to Winning or read Winning by Tim Grover, because it's his second, I think, book. Mm-hmm. And he goes even deeper because it's after Kobe has died. Right. And so he really dives
the next
into,
one.
you know, Kobe was not nearly the hero when he was alive as he has elevated the Mamba mentality, all of that. It has grown in his death, shameful or not, including myself. And I'm a huge basketball fan.
Yeah.
I liked Kobe. I loved his game in terms of like, holy cow, it's phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
But as he passed away, his story continued to flourish because at some point, this is such a fascinating that you brought up Grover, Kobe Bryant, because look at Kobe's career. Comes in as this darling, the 18-year-old. If you guys remember, he airballed like 3 shots in the playoffs against the Jazz. So he looks kind of like this really scared rookie. A couple years later, he and Shaq win 3 titles in a row. And now he becomes the villain with what happened in Colorado, right? And all that. Now, people have almost forgotten Colorado altogether because he comes back, wins 2 more titles, hurts the Achilles, still hits the free throw, like, and then Mamba mentality has just become this thing of legend. But it's such a fascinating person because he lived that hero's journey. Life was good. Holy shit, did I get just kicked hard, gets back up, goes back down, passes away, and his legend continues to rise. So I don't know, other than just giving props to him, and go read Winning because Grover dives even deeper into that. And I think you'll really dig it.
Well, I appreciate that recommendation. And if it's got the same delivery system as the one I'm taking in now, that'll be my next Audible credit for sure. I'm a Lakers fan. I grew up watching Kobe and Shaq. I mean, more even in my childhood, it was Magic, Kareem, James Worthy, the Showtime era. But as I got into my teen years, when basketball really played a role in my life, because me and my friends were so big into the NBA at that time, there were so many good teams and so many good players. We were playing basketball all the time. We absolutely loved it. And anytime I hear the who's better, LeBron or MJ argument, I'm like, why are you not? How can you not include Kobe Bryant in this argument? Because, and then I was like, and then why are you even having the argument? Because it's so freaking stupid. I mean, it's just 2 different times. Let's just move on. They're both good. I don't think anyone will ever touch Jordan, but that's my opinion. But I don't, you know, if you want to, as a Lakers fan, I don't even like LeBron. I can't wait for him to retire. I'll get past this, but it is what it is. But when I'll never forget when he died. I was at the movies with my daughter, and it was a movie for her. So I had my phone out at one point, and I looked at it, and that was where I saw the news. I'm like, and I thought it was one of those just fake, and I'm just like, this cannot be real. So now I'm like, I'm now the guy in the movie with the phone lit up that everybody probably hates, but now I'm looking for more news. And I spent the rest of that day devastated because that was one of probably the first childhood hero in regards to sports that I lost in that capacity. That was just sudden, way too soon. And I ended up getting wrapped up the rest of the day when I got home in all the stories that everybody was telling, from Shaq to Jordan to Rachel Nichols to LeBron. Like, so many had stories of being around Kobe, and they all seem to speak to his mentality of how, not how he just attacked basketball, but how he attacked life. How can you not fall in love with a person like that? It was amazing. And it sucks that a tragedy has to bring all of that good stuff forward. But like you said, all of the tragedy had been put in the past, and all of the did it happen, did it not happen type of talk was replaced by the fact that this guy brought a lot of good to the world. And there's a lot of stories that are going to stand the test of time to prove that.
He really did, man. And, you know, not to totally make this about basketball, because it's not, but my favorite story actually before he died, and this is when I looked at him differently. So the day after he retired and he scored 61, I think it was 60 something.
Yeah.
He woke up, was at his office at 8 a.m. working on what became, I think, Academy Award, that short film that he did. And I was like, holy cow, this guy is just wired different. Because if I just retired, scored 60 on basically one leg, the way his wheels were kind of falling apart on him, I think I'd be partying a little bit. I don't think I would have made it.
Yeah,
But that's just how he was, man. He was just wired differently.
that's right. Rover says it in the book. Once they reach a certain level, they're always pushing to get to the next level. It's not being complacent and saying, "Okay, I've made it." It's what's next. And he embodied
Cleaner,
that
brother.
1000%.
It's the cleaners right there.
That's right.
For people that don't know what a cleaner is, go check out Relentless by Tim
Indeed.
Grover. Some people love it, some people don't. Again, like Jason said, man, it hit him in a way that is impactful. And if Tim Grover's listening, man, great job. And he knows it, man.
Yes.
He didn't do it to help you. He did it because he had to tell that story. He talks about that.
Right.
Brother, we've been talking about stories. I love this. I want to give you a chance to any story, anything I should have known to have asked you that I just didn't, that you want to make sure to give the audience before we wrap up.
I'll leave everybody with this thought, because no matter what you're doing in the podcast space and the business space and life in general, none of it's going to get you anywhere unless you have consistency in place and consistency front of mind. I feel that bringing your story to life, it's obviously there's so much value packed into that, as we've spent the last 45 minutes to an hour talking about. There's so much jam packed into your story and how it can impact the world. But if you're not consistently putting that story out there and finding your stage, which, like I said, we've said, podcasts are, in my opinion, the best stage for that, but you may feel differently. If you gravitate to video, you gravitate to something else, that's fine. But you have to consistently put your story in front of people if you're expecting things to happen. And I think we get too flustered with poor results in the very beginning, no matter what our journey has in front of us, that we just throw ourselves completely off the rails and we don't see things through. Being consistent is what's going to make you better at your craft, and it's going to help you tell that story with more confidence and more conviction, so it can resonate with people and then they get invested in you. Much like we were talking about Kobe Bryant. I look at him, I look at a lot of the other athletes of the world, the movie stars of the world. When they tell a story on the big screen, we get invested in that story if it hits us, because they're telling it in such a powerful, compelling way. We want more. We want to know how this story ends. And if you're not consistently getting better at telling your story and how you can help people get the transformation they seek, because that's truly what people are buying. Let's not sugarcoat anything. If you've got a product, a service, that's great, but people are buying the transformation that product or service is going to bring. Your story is going to help them get to that point. I'm sure this has been talked about a bunch of times on your show, but I feel it bears repeating, because we always need to keep that front of mind. When you bring consistency to the table and you're constantly striving to up your game to a new level, you're going to make some waves in the world, and it's truly going to help whatever your efforts are stand out and put you above anyone else in your space.
It's freaking brilliantly put. And I'll just add, don't be selfish. Share your story. Share it. Yeah. Jason, where can people connect with you and just they want to tell their story better? They want to know how to really utilize podcasts to benefit their business, to benefit their growth. Where can they connect with you, brother?
Come find me at podcastguestingsimplified.com. That's going to land you on my website. And what I encourage you to do is set up a free 30-minute discovery session where we can talk about this a little bit more, because what I've discovered in my life is that so much more happens from a 30-minute conversation than anything else that you can possibly do. So I'd love to connect with you, talk to you about your story, and see if we're a good fit to work together so we can take your brand to undeniable levels.
Freaking brilliant, brother. You are a joy and a pleasure. Can't wait to be on your show as well. And
yes, sir.
Thank you for being here, man. There's really a lot of fun. I got talk some basketball too. I love it.
Yeah, we took it across the world in regards to the content today, but there's not, you know what, though, I think this speaks to the authenticity of our conversation that we were talking about in the beginning. This, to me, is much more fun because we get to just talk about things that we are truly passionate about. But when the audience is hearing this, they're benefiting from what we learned from those lessons, and hopefully they can do the same. So thank you very much for bringing me on the show and letting me share the stage with you. It's been a blast.
It's been awesome, brother. I appreciate you. You guys, look, share it. The Laker fans that want to hear about who's the greatest Laker of all time, Magic Johnson, or just, how to tell your story, because we all have it. We have it inside of us. And I want people to hear that. So make sure to share this with people that you love, because their story also deserved to be heard by the world. I appreciate you all. We will talk to you very soon. Have a great one. Thank you so much for listening. If this content is delivering value to you, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. That helps us build this community, and that is what we are all about. Building this community as big as we can, helping as many people as we can, and deliver as much value as possible. Be sure to head over to letsgowinpodcast.com for information on my coaching courses, and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Let's Go Win 365. Let's go win and transcend in life.
This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, JM Ryerson.